It should be obvious that we cannot solve a crisis with the same methods that got us into it in the first place.
This is a last chance saloon. Because if we don't really take the decisions that are vital now, it's going to be almost impossible to catch up.
We will end the moratorium on extracting our huge reserves of shale, which could get gas flowing as soon as 6 months. We'll give way.
If unprecedented changes are not made and made soon, there will be irreversible damage to the planet.
Zero carbon.
East Talk. Hello and welcome to Zero Carbonista Series 4 Fool's Gold. I'm Ian Collins and this is the UK's #1 environment-based podcast. If it's green, it's in. Another week, another chaotic set of headlines as defined by our own government. More infighting, more possible U-turns, and not a peep on anything environmental. Extraordinary times. Let's speak to our man who's been busy hitting himself over the head with a large frying pan trying to make sense of this nonsense. He is the green entrepreneur and environmentalist Dale Vince. Morning, Dale.
Yeah, morning, Ian.
It does drive you to that level of madness sometimes.
Somebody said to me yesterday, actually, you must have a flat forehead from banging it against that brick wall all the time.
Yeah,
They were talking about planning and stuff like that. But, you know.
Well, I mean, talk about put yourself into the bear pit. You actually went to the Tory party conference. Yeah,
I mean, snake pit, maybe, might be a better description. It's my second time, and I felt kind of, I don't want to say I felt more at home, but I felt less kind of alien at this one, partly probably because of my attire, because I wore this outrageous camouflage tracksuit last time accidentally, and everybody stared at me. And this time there were less stares, but it was still a really alien environment. You know, you got like so many people wearing blue suits and brown shoes, and they walk around like they don't know how to walk. It's a really funny thing.
The Ministry of Funny Walks is alive and well at the Tory party conference.
But I had fun. And I met a few interesting people, and I cruised the trade stands. They were the same trade stands as at Labour, actually, which is interesting.
Yeah, of course. Did you meet any Tories that you thought, oh, they're all right?
I met Therese Coffey actually on an escalator. She was being harassed by the media from the escalator beside us. So they were trying to talk to her through me, and I was trying to get out the way, and got to the top, and she was like following me, hiding behind me. I was just trying to get away from her, and afterwards she apologized.
Fantastic. I think that popped up on Newsnight, for which I'm pretty sure you're due a fee.
That's right. It was a 2-second cameo on Newsnight.
Yeah, they can't just be using people's images in this kind of way, even if you are providing a human shield for the health secretary.
Yeah, and I got in this year with a press pass. So, I had trouble last year. They were like,
it was all legit this time, wasn't it? There was no hassle. In you went like the Messiah turning up there in Birmingham.
But through the back door, right? Because the media weigh-in was crazy. Through a literal back door in the building, and then down hundreds of meters of corridors and downstairs, twisty-turny. I shot a little video and stuck it on social media. It was quite an unbelievable entrance. And then you come out. I
saw it, yeah.
Oh, did you? Yeah.
Sort of rabbit warren.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I couldn't quite believe it. But they didn't do that just for me, did they? No.
Did you learn anything from the party conference? That's the point. Did you come away going, wow, these guys are really onto this?
No, that's a good question. I met my friend. I have a friend from the fracking industry who I met at the audit committee a few months ago.
Oh, Frank the Frack.
I don't think his name's Frank, but he's pretty on top of all the stats. We had a useful exchange about the data, because I thought it was a news story this summer that there's only 5 years of frack gas under our feet. But what it was a repeat of a report that came out in 2019. So he straightened me out on that. So I learned that. But at the same time, the report stands. It's we got 5 years of gas. It's a peer-reviewed report as well. So quite in-depth scientific.
So the point is that the headline is there's no long-term solution out of fracking.
No, that's right. And when I was reading the story about Rees-Mogg, right, he's a comedy guy, isn't he, saying he'd love fracking in his back garden. I was reading that story just now, and how a lot of his, constituents disagree with him. But those that did agree with him were talking about fracking as a short-term fix, which is such a crazy mistake, because, the industry says it'll take 10 years to get fully up to speed. And the science says when we do that, we've got 5 years left. So, yeah, short-term in that respect, but it isn't quick to get fracking going.
Let's talk about power cuts, Dale, because big headlines really coming out yesterday talking about the possibility, and they did state that this is, worst case scenario territory. National Grid suggest there could be these 3-hour blocks of, the whole thing going off like the 1970s.
Yeah, it sounded all right to me, because I remember the 70s, and, sitting around with candles. It was quite fun. But look,
I told that very story on the radio yesterday. That was the only the 1970s was like living in a cocoon of shit for so many reasons. But actually, the one, yeah, I mean, this is the era that gave us the Austin Allegro and Blue Nun, for goodness sake. So they're not going to get off lightly. However, there was a sort of slightly romantic notion about the candles coming out.
Yeah, I liked it a lot. But what's happening with this story is that the National Grid are doing their job, and their job is to scenario plan for how the winter may unfold and what kind of capacity margins we've got, how much headroom we've got in generation. And their base case says we've got 20 gigawatts of headroom, which is a lot, right?
Right.
But they've got two other scenarios, one mildly dramatic and one even more so. And in that most dramatic scenario, we're 2 gigawatts short, right, compared to the 20. That just gives you a bit of scale. And therefore, they say we'll need to probably have some kind of pre-planned power outages of 3 hours duration and that kind of stuff. But what the thing about the story that got me the most is that National Grid say that they would do that in order to save 5% energy consumption. So that's like an energy efficiency plan, right? But that's a plan for failure, because we don't have a national energy efficiency advice program. Our government are not telling people to save energy. They say that's a personal choice. Well, in that case, that means rolling blackouts are a personal choice. That's how it looks to me.
Well, right. And actually, Liz Truss had said on a couple of interviews in the run-up to her getting the big job, will there be energy rationing on your watch? And she said no.
Yeah.
I mean, this is energy rationing, right? I mean, there's no doubt about it.
There's no doubt about it. But they live in a fantasy world, don't they, where people can choose to consume energy or not, and there won't be rationing, and there won't be handouts either, by the way, but then they'll subsidize energy bills. And I mean, come on, we can't actually have any faith in them, can we? I mean, right now, it's incredible to me, but there are big sections of the Tory party saying Liz Truss has to go. She hasn't been here a month yet, but she has to go.
Utterly unbelievable, isn't it? I mean, this is the party that got an 80-seat majority. I mean, you can't make this kind of stuff up.
Oh, honestly.
And invariably, no matter who you were, in 4 weeks in office would usually buy you, troubled times as they might be, it'd buy you a little bit of a honeymoon period. Not a big one, but a bit.
No,
she's had none of that, Kate.
No, I think she tanked the Tories' ratings just about as hard as she tanked the pound, actually. I mean, Labour have got a 30-point gap. I think that's unheard of.
Completely. We should mention, by the way, the Forest Green Rovers documentary.
Oh, yeah. Let's do it.
Which is out. And this was, I'm tempted to say, a long time coming. I can remember you talking about it being filmed. And of course, the way TV works and stuff, then they then go off into a basement somewhere in Soho and cut things about and make it all look nice and shiny. And actually, a rather impressive 1 hour documentary, which is free, by the way, has been produced.
Yeah. And actually the pandemic got in the way as well, because they started filming last winter and they'd been at it a couple of weeks and the whole team caught coronavirus, and it scuppered their entire plan because they were filming a series at that point. And so they pivoted early in the new year to shoot a single episode. But they chose a wonderful time to join us because we'd been top of the league most of the season. We had that incredibly dramatic end of season where we became league champions on goal difference, by drawing and all that kind of stuff. They captured all that drama. They captured the background to the club, all kinds of stuff. It's a great little film, actually. And as you say, it's free to air. I don't know where you find it. I mean, FIFA have got their own channel, and they're definitely putting it there. I don't know if
you go to FIFA.com/FIFA Plus, then you'll find it there.
Nice.
And it's bound to eventually spill out elsewhere as well. But at the moment, FIFA.com/FIFA Plus is where you can get it and download it for free.
Good work. You're
really
a pro.
Worth a look.
You're a pro.
Somebody here, George on Twitter, by the way, says, "Come on, Dale, what were you really doing on the escalator with Therese Coffey?"
I was trying to get away. It was so funny because I'm kind of given to feeling like socially awkward anyway, but I was completely awkward in that circumstance. This camera was trying to get to her and she's hiding behind me and I'm trying to get out of the way. And every time I move, she moved. And I was like, come on.
Are you sure you didn't arrange to meet via one of those apps, did you, Dale? Come on, be honest.
Oh, no. No.
It's just worth clearing that point up. This is how rumours start. Here's an amazing story. Bird flu. I say amazing, not in a great way, in a very disturbing way. Urgent warning to stop factory farming. What's going on here?
Yeah, I mean, I read that and I was thinking, oh my God, it's like some kind of apocalypse film, right? Where, a virus kind of mutates and incubates somewhere and gets released out into the world. Except this one is decimating global bird life. Millions of birds already have died, and it began in goose farm in China. There's no. I don't know what to say about that, but it began in China again, right? And essentially what the scientists are saying is that we've got to stop factory farming of animals because they're breeding grounds for viruses. Obviously, the coronavirus was zoonotic. It went from animals to humans, but also they're breeding viruses that go from animals to animals, and they're becoming deadly viruses, which wouldn't happen in the world, in the natural world, because of the intense conditions that these animals are packed into. And I mean, imagine a world without birds. I think that would be pretty...
well, you put 100,000 of anything under one roof and stuff is going to go badly wrong, right? I mean, you put 100,000 humans in a warehouse, stuff would go badly wrong.
Yeah, and we know it does because, there's a scary stat, right? 97% of all antibiotics that we make, we give to animals in factory farming because we know the conditions there are so bad. We've got to suppress stuff like hell, with all these antibiotics. 97%.
Wow. The arguments around this, I sense, though, Dale, get slightly relegated when people talk about the environment. There's obviously issues about the kind of cars we drive and how we heat our homes. The factory farming thing is always there, but it never seems top of the agenda, and maybe it needs kind of elevating there.
Yeah, I think it does. For me, it's all part of the food thing, energy, transport, food. If we just give up animals, then we give up factory farming naturally. It just happens. There are plenty of people that argue, oh, well, we can have kind of wild roaming animals and that kind of stuff. But there's a reason that we have factory farms, and that's because it's the only way to make that much meat to feed all of the people that want it. So if we went back to the old way of doing it, then we wouldn't create a lot of meat. Wouldn't create a lot of problems either, by the way. So that would be okay. So I would vote for that. But
well, it's interesting, just tying in with that, because talking about what should be at the top of the agenda, Connor Burns, Department of Trade and Industry for the government, said the UK should not be putting environmental issues at the top of every single trade agreement. Now, he'd be a guy that would never get bird flu onto the agenda.
I thought you were going to say never get bird flu.
Well, he might get that.
but I don't believe that our government puts environment issues at the top of every trade deal. I do not believe it.
Absolutely. So what he's arguing against himself there, I think. So.
Yeah, but they do that, right? These politicians like Trump, they put something out there that's the polar opposite of what's actually going on, right? He's like, oh, we've got to stop doing this. And it's like, well, actually, you're not doing it. It's just
right, yes. This crazy straw man argument. Kathy says, does the reality of future heat waves and limited water in the ground reduce the amount of grass available in the creation of green gas? Good question.
It's a really interesting question, and it's quite possible, but I think we actually have to transform the way we use water, and we use so much water in animal agriculture. It's another great knock-on. If we start eating plants instead of animals, we can save an awful lot of water, and we waste a lot of water in our homes as well. Yeah. So there's a lot we can do to conserve water, but it is possible. I mean, droughts are beyond our control. And there's another story that we're about to cover, I think.
Yeah, let's feed into that now, because severe droughts did choke much of the Northern Hemisphere throughout the summer, right across. And we're talking about the US, we're talking Europe, China, etc. And as you say, stuff happens anyway. But no doubt about it, as far as the world of science is, that climate change is partly to blame.
Yeah, well, a lot partly, I would say. Yeah. According to this study, they were saying that the drought this summer in Europe was a 1 in 20 year event or something like that. But at the same time, they're saying generally, looking at the data, they believe that the climate crisis has made droughts 20 times more likely. And I must be making a mistake with statistics here, but I'm like, if it's a 1 in 20, but it's 20 times more likely, that means it's going to happen every year. But I must have that wrong.
Well, who the hell knows right now? The level of confusion and inclemency when it comes to weather has been absolutely vast in the last 5-6 years.
Fair enough.
It is that time of the podcast, Dale, as we visit Fracking Corner.
Indeed, I am having some difficulty in finding the right page.
This sounds like it would just be funny if it wasn't so bloody serious, because when you introduce Jacob Rees-Mogg into any story, straight away there is a clear moment of amusement to be permed out of it. And here's one such moment. He'd be very, very happy to have fracking in his back garden as long as he was paid for it.
I'm sure he gets paid for everything he does. But I think he's a bit of a performer. I think he likes to provoke with his statements. There's no way he'd want fracking in his actual back garden, right? He lives in a listed house in Somerset with manicured lawns and that kind of stuff. There's no way. He's not being literal here. I think he means probably in somebody else's back garden in his constituency is probably what he means. But look, fracking is just the most stupid idea. It's already been resisted completely by the people to the extent that it got shut down. Government is saying, we need to bring it back now for energy security. It can't give us that. They're also saying it needs to come back now to help us with energy prices. It can't give us that. It doesn't make any sense. And the science hasn't changed. In fact, the science has doubled down and said that there's a lot of uncertainty under the ground, that Quadrilla misrepresented the fault line under Preston New Road, and actually they need 3D mapping. Oh, and by the way, Preston New Road is very difficult, but it's the easiest place in Britain. And it's like, you put all of that together, fracking ain't going to happen. I don't believe it. But we might have to take to the streets to make sure of that.
Well, they are taking to the streets. Fight against fracking in the Dee Estuary has become the UK's fastest growing protest. This is in Cheshire, of course.
Yeah, it's brilliant. And like 50,000 people signed the petition in a matter of hours or something. And it's become that fastest growing protest through that measure. And it's brilliant. I read some of the things they said that's so sensible. Like we want energy efficiency, we want renewable energy, that kind of stuff. And fracking doesn't make any sense. And I like what they said at the end. We beat it once, we beat it again.
Couple of questions here, Dale. Imran on Twitter. So has planning for onshore wind turbines been opened up by the government? It's gone quite quiet. Well, this, of course, was something we talked about last week, I think, and possibly the week before, Liz Truss making that announcement, or the mini budget making that announcement, that onshore wind will be, accelerated. I think that would be reasonable.
Yeah, I mean, the announcement was that they would unban it and more importantly, they would put it on a level playing field planning-wise with other infrastructure projects. But so far, there's been nothing else, just the announcement.
Is it too early, do you think, sir? I mean, you'd like to think that some character in the business department or wherever it is, the environment department, are kind of looking at this and trying to dot the I's and cross the T's.
You'd hope, wouldn't you? I hope so. I hope it's not Jacob Rees-Mogg, but I hope somebody's doing it.
Yes. Maybe they'll get Prince Charles to sign it with a leaky pen.
Yeah.
That's what we need. Yeah, I think he would happily sign that, by the way, if it was down to him.
Oh, I don't think so.
You don't think?
No, not when I spoke to him a few times. He's not in, or was not in favour of big windmills. He likes the little ones, but not the big ones. Yeah. So I'm not sure about that. And you remind me, I read also that he has to approve National Grid's plan for power cuts. How weird.
Is that right? I mean, I'm sure it's just a procedure, but even so, it's kind of strange to hear that.
It is, isn't it?
Does His Majesty approve? I do.
We're only now learning how many times Queen Elizabeth approved or modified legislation in Britain over the course of her reign, because it's been kept secret. And it wasn't subject to the not Data Protection Act, the other one.
Freedom of Information.
That one. That one. Wasn't subject to that. That's changing in Scotland now. We're learning a lot from that.
Yeah. Well, let's look at what the government's policy is, or seems to be, or plan when it comes to energy. Kirstine on LinkedIn says, what are your thoughts on the government's nuclear fusion plan?
I think it's brilliant. Because it's never going to happen.
Just talk us over. What is it they've announced and why can't it happen?
Well, nuclear fusion has been around as an idea for a very long time, maybe as long as nuclear fission. I don't really know, which is where you split the atom. In nuclear fusion, you force them together. And nuclear fusion itself is a really hard thing to achieve. And I think it was only a year or so ago that there was this massive breakthrough, the biggest breakthrough in like 50 years of trying to make nuclear fusion work. And some scientist somewhere had built a reactor that actually made as much energy as it used. So it broke even energy terms. And that was like the biggest step forward in 50 years. Wow. And, we're nowhere with nuclear fusion. And, let's come back to the main point, right? We need to do something quickly. The climate crisis won't wait. The energy security and price crisis isn't waiting, right? It's upon us right now. And the fastest, simplest, cheapest, cleanest thing we can do is roll out renewable energy. And if nuclear fusion comes along one day, whoopie-doo, we'll pull all the windmills down. But I don't think it's happening.
What a great point to finish on. Dale, have a cracking week. We'll speak in 7 days.
Awesome. See you then.
Good, man. That's it for this episode. Don't forget, of course, to follow this podcast from your podcast provider so that you get each new episode automatically. Leave a review there too, and follow Dale on social media, twitter.com/Dale Vince, facebook.com/Dale Vince, also on Insta, on LinkedIn, and TikTok too.
Zero Carbon
East of.